deception, jealousy, anger, and betrayal on display in a family of high society wannabes. You might be thinking that I'm talking about the Kardashian family reality show. However, this description is about a classic novel from the 19th century. Pride and Prejudice is a novel written by Jane Austen in 1813. The genre of Pride and Prejudice is a comedy, but not as in a funny story. For a novel to be classified as a comedy, it basically has to have a happily ever after ending. Think of Beauty and the Beast and Cinderella Slipper Fits. These would be considered comedies. Pride and Prejudice details the story of the Bennet family. Mrs. Bennet's sole purpose to write the novel is to find her daughters a husband to marry. Elizabeth Bennet is the main character of the novel, and the story is mostly told from her perspective. Mr. Bennet and his friend, Mr. Darcy, visit the village of Longbourn, which is where the Bennet family lived, and they attract the attention of Elizabeth and Jane. Jane and Mr. Bingley begin to spend a lot of time together. But as soon as Jane gets her heart set on marriage, Mr. Bingley returns to London without contacting her. Mr. Darcy proposes to Elizabeth, but she refuses his proposal because she believes that he's an arrogant and rude man, and she believes that Mr. Darcy urged Mr. Bingley to stay away from Jane because she was not part of the same social class as he was. Meanwhile, Elizabeth finds another love, Mr. Wickham. Mr. Wickham explains to Elizabeth that Mr. Darcy cheated him out of his inheritance. Also, Mr. Bingley's sister despises Elizabeth because she has captured the attention of Mr. Darcy. Mr. Bingley's sister believes that she is the right suitor for Mr. Darcy, not Elizabeth. Many people do not want to read Pride and Prejudice because they believe, since it is an old book, that it cannot be any good. But I would have to disagree with this common misunderstanding. The book was kind of slow and boring at first, but the farther I read into the book, I could not stop reading it. The book captured my attention and I could not put it down. As I was reading the book, I wanted Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth to end up together. I did not want their pride and their wrongful prejudices that they held of each other to keep them apart. As a reader, I knew they belonged together, but I wasn't for sure if the story was going to end that way. Also, during the time the novel was set, it was a disgrace for a couple to be together out of wedlock. In the novel, Mr. Wickham and Lydia Bennet eloped together. It was a very suspenseful part of the book because you didn't know if the family would find Lydia and Mr. Wickham in enough time to stop them from disgracing their family. The first line of Pride and Prejudice is one of the most famous lines in literature. Jane Austen starts her novel with, "It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife." With this statement, Jane Austen shows the preoccupation with social advantages of marriage in the 19th century in English society. Jane Austen reveals that a single woman whose socially prescribed options are quite limited is perhaps desperate in want of a husband. On the surface, Pride and Prejudice may appear boring and stuffy, but if you dig a little deeper, you will experience the romance and suspense as you hope for Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy to live happily ever after.